In this video, we examine online assessment that helps with a closer look at D2L's Grades tool. Let's dive in. So as we begin, let's start with this scenario. Imagine you are teaching from a pre-built online course, and some of your students appear to have not submitted any work. Other students have either done too much or not enough. And the broader question that we're going to be tackling here is what online assessment practices might hinder student growth and which assessments might actually help students grow and persist. So as a quick overview of what we're going to be discussing, first we're going to dig into the key features of the D2L Grades tool. We'll also look at some core caveats and limitations you should be aware of. Then we'll take a moment to look at assessment design within PimaOnline. And then we're going to do a walkthrough that's a little bit more focused on how the D2L Grades experience works. We will then run through some scenarios and consider how you might respond. And then we'll share some connected video tutorials, some closing caveats, and we'll finish up. So without further ado, let's begin. We're going to start off by looking at key features in the D2L Grades tool. So, key features for your pedagogical experience. I think number one, we need to begin with the live gradebook. Again, one of the benefits of having an online gradebook is that students can always see their current overall grade as long as you keep it updated. D2L refers to this currently as the final calculated grade. A second piece that's very useful for this specific tool is the ability to have kind of a whole class comparative view so that you can add scores and share feedback while seeing what did you give other students, just to make sure that you're giving scores that seem like they're evenly allocated appropriately across the class. It's also color-coded, and we'll show you what that looks like in a moment. It helps for student self-monitoring, but it also helps for instructors when we need to do interventions. It's also very easy to export as a comma-separated value or an Excel spreadsheet. This export does not include feedback, it's just the actual scores. And there's also a multi-select email feature that allows us to quickly email students that are non-participants and do an intervention when we need to. So here's a visual of the color-coded experience. You can see I've included 5 students in a screenshot. Everything that is in A, which would be a 46 out of 50 or higher, is going to be highlighted in blue. Everything that's a B would be highlighted in green, and so on. So I can quickly scan through visually within the gradebook and get a quick sense of who might be missing a lot of work that I might want to reach out to and check in on and support. Regarding other current features within D2L Grades, it's super easy to use. There's a spreadsheet experience built right in that resembles Excel or just entering data into Google Sheets. It is internally linked with every D2L branded tool, like discussions, quizzes, or assignments, so that we can have a consistent assessment experience across all of those tools. It's a huge time saver. If you ever need to multi-select students to set grades or add bulk feedback, for example, with students in a group project, you can even utilize personalized form fields, which D2L refers to as replace strings. So I could say, hi, brackets, first name, and brackets, and then I could say something like full points for meeting all requirements and ... And then I could give feedback to the whole group in that context. Generally speaking, we see at PimaOnline either percents or points-based gradebooks. Percents D2L refers to as weighted. Most of ours are points-based, to be frank, just because they're really simple for our students to understand, but we do have some labor-based approaches too, so make sure to check the hidden modules to get further guidance on how to approach the assessment within your course. So some quick caveats and limitations on the D2L's Grades tool experience currently. First off, it's not dialogical. What I mean by that, it's a one-way street. In other words, teachers can give top-down teacher-centered feedback that students can receive notifications around, but students can't respond. Not within the tool. It's just not set up to support dialogue with you around assessment, and it's hard to know when students have read our feedback. As a workaround, you might consider asking students to follow up directly through virtual office hours or a shared Google document or some kind of other third-party tool. Second piece to keep in mind is that sometimes the gradebook can feel almost ironclad. So in other words, it's difficult to easily swap one linked learning activity with another in a pre-built gradebook unless you're pretty proficient with D2L. It's not a plug-and-play experience. Some faculty will just add slide extensions or addendums to activity guidelines, and most of our PimaOnline faculty will focus on personalization, RSI, or supplementary resources, and what we would call non-disruptive edits. In other words, not attempting to edit the gradebook, but potentially editing some of the guidelines within a specific activity. Also, it's not set up for self or peer assessment. What I mean by that is that it's not metacognitive. The D2L Grades tool and all the connected D2L tools and rubrics are currently not set up to scaffold student self-assessment or reflective annotation around progress and growth. Likewise, these tools do not support peer assessment yet either. I should also note that there are some items that are not linkable to the Grades tool, like the D2L Survey or the D2L Self-Assessment tools. A workaround here is that some courses include unlinked grade items where you can manually go in and score those to recognize effort. In terms of assessment design at PimaOnline, most of our courses you'll see an emphasis on low-stakes formative assessments. In other words, we want to be able to co-monitor with our students their ongoing growth, gaps, perhaps misconceptions that one or more students might have. Some courses will include summative assessments, especially those that need to prepare students for certification exams. We will generally try to include multiple methods for students to demonstrate their knowledge, and informal feedback loops are often visible within our courses. That might be a D2L survey, a D2L self-assessment, a Google form, etc. Some of these courses do include bonuses as incentives. In other words, to promote inquiry or to promote help-seeking and peer support behavior. So in terms of assessment within the pre-built course, again, these are ready-made designs. No changes are needed, and I would strongly recommend treading lightly. In general, you don't need to change anything. In terms of design tweaks, they would mainly be to adjust your personal default view within D2L Grades and to ensure that overall grades would be visible to students. All right, so let's take a look at what it looks like to assess from the gradebook using the D2L Grades tool. So first off, this is what it looks like when we open it up. We can take a closer look here at a sample of work that's been submitted. You'll see a little icon with an orange dot in the upper right corner for one of these students, which means that they've been the first to submit. One of the things I want to note here that you don't necessarily need to use, but it's very useful, is D2L's Class Progress tool. Again, it's built right in from this Grades tool view. If we look closer, you'll see that little graph chart right next to the name of the student. If you click on that, you can open up a broader view of everything from content to discussions to assignments and so on, so that any item that's D2L specific, you can track engagement from that side. You can even see, well, how many threads have they created? How many replies have they done within this view? So just leaping right into it from the Grades tool. If you click on details, for example, you are able to actually click on the specific posts and open them up from this view as well. If you want to learn more about how to use the Class Progress tool, again, please visit community.d2l.com for their knowledge base articles. Let's take a look now at how we grade individual items from the D2L Grades tool. In this example, we see a sample submission by a student. We can see a small little icon with a orangish red dot. We're going to click on that. When we do, this opens the Assess Student window. So that includes, of course, the post or more than one post if there is, a linked rubric, a grade that's overall, and a feedback area. In terms of recommended processes within this experience for assessing students, you can first off review your students' posts and their replies. You can click on the linked rubric to score and give feedback by criteria. It's a huge time saver. And then you can also share overall feedback, which is personalized for that individual student. Then you can decide to either click Save Draft or you can publish. So let's take a closer look at the process and at the D2L Rubrics experience. In this example, we see a student's post that is talking about art versus craft for one of our classes. Again, this is a hypothetical piece of writing. We see it included here as well as an image. It's also important to scroll down because sometimes there's text underneath whatever's been posted, so just make sure to scroll down as you read it. After you've read the post or viewed the video submitted by your student, go ahead and click on the rubric. So let's pause for a second just to see how rubrics look in pre-built course masters before we go any further. First off, we can use rubrics to assign point values right within the experience. And when we click on it, it provides automated custom feedback by criteria. So you'll notice here that as I click on one item and give a 12 out of 15 score, it says the initial prompt posting meets the length requirement and is posted on time. The second post does not meet the length requirement, but is posted on time. So again, these are pre-written in some pre-built courses. That said, rubrics do not always include automated feedback, so keep that in mind. If you want to see a larger view of the rubric experience, you can return to course view and then select rubrics from wherever you find it within the nav bar. When you click on rubrics, it will open up a larger list of all the rubrics associated with the class, and then you can go down to your discussion or assignment rubric, and then you want to click on the drop-down and choose Preview. As this opens up, you can scroll through it, you can zoom in or zoom out, or you can adjust your window. I often like to just print it to my computer and get a PDF of it. So there's the print button in the upper right-hand corner. When we click print, we can either print to our computer or we can print to a PDF. What I tend to do is set these as landscape, and then I reduce the scale so that as much of it fits on a page as possible. Returning to assessments and scoring and providing feedback. When we're inside the space, we see a sort of a reduced view that tells us just one row at a time what we need to know, and we can put our scores in manually. So again, you'll see in this example, I've given a 12 out of 15 to assign point values. I can go in and say, you know what, I'm going to give a 14 on that instead of a 12 by manually clicking on the criteria score and just typing in my own score. As you add personalized feedback, you can either add it right within the rubric by criteria by clicking on the blue Add Feedback item underneath each criteria row, or you can add overall feedback by scrolling down to the bottom and typing into the overall feedback section. Another very useful feature of the D2L Grades tool is the ability to grade all work submitted within an individual item. So for process, again, you can find the column where you want to be able to enter grades, and you'll click on that drop down and choose Enter Grades. From this window, you can add scores and feedback, but before we do that, we want to take a closer look at the ability to share whole class feedback. It's a very uncommon practice, but it is now possible in Brightspace and might be worth taking a look at. So first off, when this window opens, you can click on Show Details and Overall Feedback. When you click on that, a window will appear that allows you to enter in whole class feedback. All right, so for our first scenario, which I will call Zilch, we are working with students who have not yet submitted any work. This is our leading scenario, and again, when I open up the individual grade item, it's not looking good. I see one student who has submitted their work, named Demo Student 20. If I scroll down, looks like almost no one has submitted any kind of work, and I need to keep their grades up to date. I need to add some feedback as quickly as possible, even though there's not much to say. So in this example, I'm going to use the checkboxes and click on each one if I'd like, or if we prefer, I can click on that top item in the upper left-hand corner, and that will effectively select all of the students inside the class, and then I can deselect any checkbox until it turns white. So now I've got everything highlighted in blue that I want to respond to. Then in terms of the next step, I'm going to click on that Add Feedback button. And before we add feedback, something you just want to keep in mind is what helps or hurts when it comes to feedback in situations like this. So in this example, I've written this phrase: this 0 is a temporary placeholder grade to keep your current overall grade updated. Please complete this within 3 days and message me when you do so I can update the grade. And then I include my name as a closer. Is that going to be effective? Is that going to help or hurt? Again, every teacher has a different philosophy, but you have to come back to what specific practices reflect your core beliefs about teaching and learning as you provide feedback. So let's see what this looks like inside the course. You'll notice that within the feedback column, we see text entered in that says the 0 is a temp ... This means that feedback has been entered for every row that is blue. Next, we're going to take a look at setting grades. Again, I still have those items selected, so all I have to do now is click on the Set Grades button. So returning to our core essential question, what helps or hurts students when it comes to scoring in particular? So I can give a 0, or I could give a 30, which is also an F. And I should note that one of our Professor Emerituses, who has taught this class before, does not recommend giving zeros for students who are either late with work or students that have gotten an F, because it's so hard to overcome a 0. It's easier to overcome a 50% than a 0. So this is a choice you want to consider as you're thinking about grades. Our second scenario that we'll dive into is the seedling. So for this scenario, imagine a student submission, shall we say, is emerging. To put it another way, it's a seedling or a sapling. It's not the whole tree. It's not what we're hoping for, but it shows promise, potentially. So, before we dive into this scenario, I'm going to do another quick tech tip to set your grades the right way to save yourself time in the future. Let's dive into this quick tutorial. So here is a 30-second tip. First off, many courses will default to something that's called the Manage Grades view. To set your own default to quickly view grades, you can go in and click on the settings gear within D2L Grades and just choose Enter Grades as your default view. So as a visual, this is what Manage Grades looks like. When you click on that settings icon in the upper right-hand corner or the gear, you'll see a personal display options appear at the very top, and you're just going to scroll down until you find what you're looking for. And you're going to find this section at the bottom called Start Page with a default grades area. You're going to click on Manage Grades, which has a drop-down of other choices, and you're going to choose Enter Grades and then click the blue Save button. That's something you can do in all of your classes, so that the next time that you open the D2L Grades tool, it'll go straight into Grades view, and you can enter grades rather than going into Manage Grades view. As a secondary note, if you prefer, you can always click on Spreadsheet view instead of the standard view we just saw. So here is the general standard view. When you click on Spreadsheet view, it turns into something like this, where you can directly enter in the score. You can't see what they've submitted. There's no little icon that shows that, but you can enter in the score. There's pros and cons to this. So imagine you're super busy and you need to transfer grades around something where students already have gotten feedback. And it's maybe in a shared document that includes interactive discussions or even a rubric. They've already gotten their feedback, so you don't need to add feedback. You just want to get the score in. Super useful for that use case. A con might be that this can lead us pedagogically towards some worst practices in assessment. In other words, scoring without feedback. Again, we want to be doing meaningful, authentic feedback with our students that is personalized, but this spreadsheet view doesn't necessarily support the process of sharing that kind of feedback. This view also, and I said this before, lacks the clickable icon that the standard view provides that would show if work has already been submitted. So there's pros and cons to it. Let's look closer at that submission we were talking about previously. So this view is very clean and tidy, and it shows the submission, the name of the submission, the fact that it is not evaluated, and the format. I can download this PDF to my computer if I want to be able to read it full screen or print it out, or to use an assistive device, let's say if I want to read it with my ears. For this example, I am going to go ahead and open the PDF right within D2L. When I click on that icon for the tool, this is the document viewer that D2L now provides. Whether it's a Word document or a Google document, it will convert it into a PDF. You know, I can see it, but I want to take a closer look, so I'm going to click on that icon in the upper right-hand corner, which has 4 arrows going in all directions, and I'm going to open it full screen. No distractions. There are some icons at the very top that I can use to add comments directly onto this, as if I was writing straight onto the document. And some of our faculty that have tablets like the iPad Pro will be able to just write directly onto this using a stylus. In my experiences, I'll just write into it and share notes using my mouse. There is the ability to add quick notes wherever you'd like to. It does have, if you click on the icons that are available, a variety of choices that allow you to add stars, to add paragraph marks, to add comments. I should also note that it has a regular editor, so you can insert a text box and choose the font and style that you'd like, and enter in an annotation right on the side of that. Again, students can't respond to that annotation at this point, but you can add an annotation to the PDF of their writing, which is within this view. You can also use the highlighter, and you can draw lines, etc. Returning to our Seedling submission and our scenario overall, the broader question is what's going to help or what will hurt when it comes to our feedback. In this first example, I'm taking an approach that seems to me to be accountable, but also flexible. You be the judge. In this one, I've begun by saying, brilliant, Maria, but brief. You've earned partial credit, but please submit a revision addressing the items below to get full points. This can be A-level work with a little more effort here. Stay with it, and if you have any more questions, reach out or schedule a meeting with me using the homepage instructor widget. As we move forward, I also make a note about the next assignment, and I conclude by saying thanks, and I include my name, and then I include some resources at the very end that might support that student. So this is the partial credit approach that keeps students accountable to the rubric, but is flexible enough to allow for revision. This is what it looks like inside the tool. And you'll notice here, in terms of the scoring, the overall grade is actually a 30 out of 60. So, is that going to work? In the sample feedback number 2, I could have responded by saying, as this is your first assignment submission, you get full points, but the remaining assignments are closely evaluated using the rubric. So, very different approach here. Just slightly changing the language and including a note that here are the scores they would have received if it wasn't the first assignment. So, is that going to work? There's all kinds of things you can do to show flexibility. Some faculty choose to also drop the lowest score. So what about actionable feedback? Is the feedback that we're providing to our students actually usable for revision or for their next assignment? Instead of telling students how well they did or how well they didn't do and ending the discussion, I'm trying to entertain the idea that my feedback can be used for something. And in this example, we're looking at feedback that I share that promotes revision. I say, please submit a revision addressing the points below, etc. I also include a closing note that references specific points that I want them to look at as they revise, along with resources. As an alternate approach, you can simply focus on providing feedback that they might use in their next assignment or discussion. And in this example, you'll see that I'm suggesting to choose another apartheid-era artist to compare with and to make sure that they look closely at the rubric requirements to earn full points. So that's general actionable feedback, but what specifically can we do that helps students actually take the next step? What kind of feedback and links will make a difference? In terms of where you provide your feedback, it can be either in the overall section or within the linked rubric, if there is a rubric linked to a specific discussion or an assignment. As we go in, you can see this is what it looks like inside the overall feedback section. I also might have some common links that I send out to students who forget to insert images or students who maybe need to brush up on techniques and elements. So I sent a playlist of YouTube videos or resources from our museum. Again, these are all supplements, resources that I'm bringing to the table as the instructor of record, which students really value. I also include a citation resource, which is built right into the course, but just reminding them to go back to their introductory module. In this example, you can see that I've selected some text and I am going in and inserting a quick link and then pasting in the website into the URL box and then clicking the blue insert button. After linking to the YouTube playlist, I'm also going to link to some internal content. So for this process, I will select the text. I will go in and insert quick links. Then I will choose content because I want it to link right within the modules. Then I will choose the section, which is the first module, which is our welcome module. And then I will choose the item, which in this case is identifying reliable and scholarly sources. And when I click on that, then suddenly, voila, I have a link straight to my own content so that students will remember to revisit the stuff that's already there. Whether you're creating links with your text or just cutting and pasting those website links, these can be super helpful for your students. So the question here is, do we want to put it in overall feedback or do we want to add our feedback within the linked rubric? So let's go ahead and click on the linked rubric and see what that looks like. As we go through, you can see that I can add scores here, and there's already some automated feedback. As we take a closer look, you'll see that I chose the far left column and gave it a 10 out of 10 by accident. In this example, you can see the feedback that's being automatically created. Please keep in mind that not all rubrics will automatically have auto feedback like this, but some of them do, and it's quite a useful feature. If there isn't any automated feedback, or if I just want to add a little bit more, I can go in and click on the Criterion feedback section and share my own words. In this example, I wanted to begin with the compliment that it was insightful and it was on time, but acknowledge that it was not 400 to 500 words. Each aspect of your rubric can have its own Criterion feedback, and you can add personalized feedback right within that if you'd like. In this example, I've moved my overall feedback into this Criterion feedback section, and the links still work just fine. So that all seems hunky-dory, but here's a question for you. What do you think is going to happen when your students see that score first, before they look at your feedback? It does say 30 out of 60. Does that read like partial credit, or does that read like an F to your students? Some faculty will actually ask students to click on their audio feedback and say, please listen to it carefully, the hope being that their tone of voice will come through, their encouragement will come through. Do you think that might soften the blow, or do you think it would be ignored? The broader question is a pedagogical question. Should we be stringent from the start, or should we be more flexible at the outset? Do we strictly apply the rubric to promote accountability, or will that alienate students from viewing your feedback? If you prefer taking a more lenient start, you can still score within the rubric, but then override the overall grade. In this example, I've used the rubric to evaluate, but now I've gone into the overall grade section and I've changed it to 60, and I'm clicking on the blue Publish button. All right, folks, so some final caveats for the D2L Grades tool and some connected practices that you're going to want to know how to do. First off, in terms of PBL or project-based learning, there is no comprehensive project view within the tool. Yes, any item can be viewed individually, but there's no simple way to just export all connected items. Let's say I might want my outline, the first draft, the peer feedback, and the final draft, export it all into a large single PDF for a larger evaluation. You can't do that yet within the tool. The tool is also not set up for project tracking. In other words, there's no dashboard for assessing the scope or the quality of progressive connected submissions or drafts or student reflections within an iterative project. In terms of reflective practice, I like to pull student work and then revisit it after the fact and see, okay, well, how did my students do and how did I support that work? If you want to be able to download student artifacts, keep in mind that while individual submissions can be downloaded from the tools, there's no feature within D2L Grades to download student artifacts in bulk for further review after class. Likewise, when it comes to teaching artifacts, while I can pull my individual feedback and copy and paste it into a separate doc, there is no feature in D2L Grades to download my feedback artifacts for further review or for research or reflective practice. Regarding D2L's ability to autograde, currently D2L Quizzes is the tool that autogrades, and it does autograde some kinds of questions, and it also offers automated feedback by question. D2L discussions or assignments, however, do not offer automated completion grading or AI-based review. I should also note that D2L surveys and self-assessments are unable to automate completion grades and have those visible within the gradebook. As a workaround, you can create your own self-assessment quizzes in which all multiple choice answers are correct, and you'll learn a bunch about your students, and they will get full points for giving you feedback. For those of you who are used to providing a range of choices, keep in mind that like most LMSs, D2L provides one-to-one links. It can't multi-link a grade item with 3 different discussions so that students can choose which discussion they want to use to meet the assignment's goals. It's a one-to-one link. That said, as a workaround, some of our PimaOnline courses do provide a degree of choice around how students demonstrate knowledge or complete project-based learning. This usually means a range of options within a single Brightspace or external tool. Another piece to be aware of is that students cannot tailor or switch category views. In other words, grade items are grouped by categories within pre-built courses, but you can't just say, well, I want to see the project category view or I want to see the chronological category view. It's the way it is when you view it. So for example, if your gradebook uses project categories instead of chronological categories, it's all the more helpful to provide reminders within the announcements of which activities are around the corner. As another design caveat focused on andragogy, A lot of us like to help students move from self-monitoring to self-directed learning. And sometimes as the last day for late work approaches, it can be real tough for students to decide which late work they want to submit in order to get up to that next grade. There is no automatic nudge providing students with recommendations. That said, the personal touch of a direct intervention may be the best approach, especially given that math isn't always easy for everyone here. Some faculty will also set up D2L intelligent agents that email students when their grades fall below a certain level. Another caveat to keep in mind is that there is no in-app guidance for your pedagogical experience. In my fantasy land, there would be a Moose tour, D2L Moose guiding us on how to use a specific tool as it relates to the pedagogy. And that would be not only for us as educators, but for the student view, for them to have a view, and for administrators or guests. It's a ridiculous name, I know, but I love the idea of a guided pedagogy view. In the meantime, our workaround is this. First off, we promote including links within your course or your announcements to the PimaOnline student guide, which provides tutorials on how to do stuff, and also visiting the PimaOnline faculty guide for any question that you have. Furthermore, you can add our faculty quick links widget. And we have a specific page dedicated to that now where you can get a quick refresher on the things that matter to you. Here's a closer look on all of the items that are included in the current iteration of that widget. Let's close out with some final tips for the D2L Grades tool. First off, the jargon. Currently, the term final calculated grades, it just means the current overall grade. And you can manually go in and change it, but the default phrase that's used inside D2L is final calculated grades. Secondly, if somebody says, make current grades visible, that's what D2L calls releasing grades. And that's something you're going to need to do because of a glitch in which, I don't know why, but some students regularly appear as not being able to see their final calculated grade or their current overall grade. We're going to walk through how to do that. And this is a skill you'll need to be able to use within your classes. So there's two ways to make grades visible. One is to do it for an individual student, and the other one is just to release them for all of your students. The broader question here is, what good is a live gradebook if students cannot view their current overall grade? We want to make sure they can see their overall grade, self-monitor, and make informed choices as they move forward in the class. So let's look at how we release grades for an individual student. First off, you're going to go through the nav bar and locate wherever grades is located and click on it. Next, you're going to want to go into that space and locate the final calculated grade. Some courses will rename this as a different phrase, but most courses will still continue to call it final calculated grade. All right, so as we scroll down through here, you'll notice that the first three rows have a gray eyeball, and the fourth row down has a gray eyeball with a line through it. In other words, the fourth hypothetical student in this list cannot see their current overall grade. That's a problem. How do we fix that? Ideally, we could just click on that icon and change it, but instead there's a little bit of a convoluted process right now where you're going to have to go back into Final Calculated Grades and, believe it or not, click on Enter Grades. When you do that, you'll notice that there is a column in the far right side that says Released. You'll notice in this example that demo student number 4 does not have their grade released. And so I'd want to click on that item, and then I would click the blue Save and Close button, and then all of my students within that section can see their grades. Another approach can be just to release grades for all students, and here's the process on that. Many of you will need to do this within your courses, so please keep an eye on this as the semester begins. So like the last time, from our nav bar, we're going to find grades wherever they're located. We're going to open the Grades tool. We're going to click on the drop-down next to Final Calculated Grade. We're going to click on Enter Grades just like before. And as we look at this visibility column called Released, we'll see that actually there's a lot of students who cannot see their current overall grade. That's not good. So how are we going to fix that? We can go up to the Final Grades drop-down and choose the Release All button. Then you'll get a pop-up window that says, hey, this is a confirmation that you want to release the final calculated grade to all 9 users. Are you sure you want to do that? And like nearly everything in D2L, you just click on the blue button, which is yes in this case, and keep it moving. For those of you who want to take a deeper dive into this, we do encourage you to take our TEACH125 and TEACH150 courses, followed by our Lead 180 Rethinking Rubrics class, which focuses on the framing question, when do our online assessment practices help or hurt our students? As a closing note for this extended video, please keep in mind that there are many connected videos that are worth taking a closer look at that may be built into the TEACH125 extended video quiz experience. Here are some of those videos. First off, we have an introduction to the grades tool within D2L. Then we have adding grades from D2L Grades. And then we have exporting grades. And again, there's so much you can play with right within YouTube. That's the heart of it, folks. We'll see you online.